Subject and object. To begin with, we need to determine what it is that we really think we know. Something has to be accepted as known. Otherwise we would constantly be forced to define one unknown by means of another. Desiring to know anything, therefore, we should before anything else determine what we accept as given, then what demands definition and proof, defining what it is that we know already and then what it is that we wish to know. The relationship between knowledge of the world and of ourselves, assuming ideal conditions, should accept nothing as given and regard all as demanding definition and proof. The position taken by 19th-century positivist philosophy, that matter is that in which the changes called motion take place, and motion is those changes which take place in matter, is circular and really defines nothing at all, i.e. that x equals y and y equals x. For the average man, then, there are two obvious facts: the existence of the world in which he lives, and the existence of consciousness in himself. This is not necessarily saying that these two facts can be proven, only that for the average man they constitute reality for him. It is possible, of course, to reflect upon the mutual correlation of these two facts, to try to reduce them to one and regard the inner, psychic world as a part, reflection or function of the outer material world. However, this necessitates a departure from fact, and we are left with the sole obvious truth, the antithesis of I and not I. This we shall accept therefore as given, and accept that all the rest demands proof and definition in terms of these two basic details. Space, with its extension of time, along with the idea of before, now and after, quantity, mass, materiality, number, equality, inequality, identity and difference, cause and effect, the ether, atoms, electrons, energy, life and death, all this is laid down as the basis of our usual knowledge. All these are, however, unknown quantities. The laws of physics and logic, the numerical system, the principles of algebraic substitution, all are in fact phantoms. We simply believe in them so thoroughly that they seem real to us. The existence in us of psychic life, of sensations, perceptions, conceptions, reasoning, feeling and desires, together with the existence of the world outside of us, from these two fundamental facts emerges the division of everything that we know and perceive, into subjective and objective. The objective world we recognize directly. It is within us and we are one with it. The subjective world we picture as existing somewhere outside of us. We and it are different things. Man's two obvious facts are therefore the subjective outer world and the inner objective world seem to be different in one important way. It would seem to us that if we closed our eyes for a moment, then the subjective world will continue to exist, such as we just saw it. However, if our inner life were to disappear, then so too would the objective world. If our objective world were to disappear, the subjective world would still go on existing, as it existed before, as it existed at the time when we were not, when our objective world was not. Our relationship to the subjective world is defined therefore by the fact that we perceive the subjective, external world as existing in time and in space. Otherwise, outside of these conditions, we would neither conceive nor imagine it. In general, therefore, we say that the subjective world consists of things and phenomena, then things, and the changes that take place in the states of things. Phenomena exist for us in time and the things in space. Yet our cognition of the subjective and the objective may be false. We know nothing about things separately from ourselves because we have no means of verifying the correctness or incorrectness of our cognition of the objective world, apart from sensations which we are able to perceive. By simple reasoning, we can therefore establish that in reality, we know only our own sensations, perceptions or conceptions and cognize the objective world by projecting outside of ourselves the causes of our sensations, presupposing them to contain these causes. Then we find that our knowledge of the subjective world and of the objective world can also be true and false, correct or incorrect. The criteria used to define the correctness or incorrectness of one sensation from others is the force and nature of the sensation itself. In other words, the correctness of one sensation is verified by comparing it with another, of which we are more certain, or by the intensity and clarity of a given sensation. The criteria used for the definition of correctness and incorrectness of our knowledge of the subjective world is very similar. We define the things and phenomena of the subjective world by comparing them among ourselves and then agreeing by consensus that we find the laws of their existence outside of ourselves, and independent of our perception of them. This is, however, an illusion, as we know nothing about things separated from us and can have no means of verifying the correctness of our knowledge of the subjective world, other than through perception. Since the remotest antiquity, questions arising as to our relationship with the true causes of our sensations have formed the basis of philosophical research. Men have sought solutions to these questions and found only some answers. These answers have swung between two poles, from the complete negation of the causes themselves, and the assertion that the causes of sensation are within ourselves, therefore not in anything outside of us, to the recognition that we know these causes, that they are embodied in the phenomena of the outer world and that these phenomena constitute the causes of our sensations. That the causes of all observed phenomena lie within the movement of their constituent parts, and the oscillations of the surrounding ether. It is reasoned that if we cannot observe these motions and vibrations, then this is only because we lack sufficiently powerful instrumentation to do so. Therefore, once the technology becomes available, we shall be able to observe the relationships that exist between everything that surrounds us, or that which lies within us. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant (1724–1804) occupies a middle position and stated in his theory that the causes of sensation lie in the outside world. However, we cannot know these causes through adopting a sensual approach by using the means through which we perceive phenomena. We cannot know these causes in this way and shall never know them. Human beings perceive the world in forms of time and space, but out of time and space we can know nothing by way of the senses. Time and space are necessary conditions of sensuous receptivity, by means of the five organs of sense. Furthermore, Kant established that extensions in space and existence in time are not properties pertaining to things, but simply the properties of our sensuous receptivity. That in reality, apart from our sensual knowledge of them, things can exist independently of time and space, however we cannot perceive them outside of this time and space. We perceive things and phenomena sensuously and by virtue of this, impose upon them, the conditions of time and space, as perceived by our form of sensation. Space and time, defining everything that we cognize by sensual means, are in themselves simply forms of our receptivity, categories of our intellect, the prism through which we regard the world. In other words, space and time do not represent properties of the world, but simply properties of our knowledge of the world, gained through our sensual organism. It follows therefore that the world, apart from our knowledge of it, has neither extension in space nor extension in time. That these are simply properties that we ascribe to it. Cognition of space and time arise in our intellect, during its contact with the external objective world, by means of the organs of sense, and do not exist in the external world apart from at our contact point with things. Space and time are simply categories of intellect, properties that are ascribed by us to the external world. They are picture frames, ordering put there by ourselves because we cannot visualize the external world without their help. We represent the world to ourselves through holograms. Projecting outside of ourselves the causes of our sensations, we are illustrating these causes in space and we picture continuous reality to ourselves as a series of moments of time, following one another in a linear progression. Frames on a strip of film or data stream. This is necessary for us because a thing, having no definite extension in space, not occupying a certain part of space and not lasting a certain length of time, does not exist for us at all. A thing, not in space and divorced from the idea of space, not included in the category of space, will not differ from some other thing, in any particular way. It will occupy the very same space, coincide with it, becoming superimposed upon our perception of it. All phenomena not in time, divorced from the idea of time, and not taken in this or that standpoint of before, now and after, would coexist for us simultaneously and get all mixed up with one another. Our weak mind would not be able to distinguish one moment from the infinite variety of always and forever. Our consciousness segregates, out of a chaos of impressions, separate groups and we construct in space and time properties of things, according to these groups or impressions. Our sense of logic has to divide things somehow and therefore divides them according to categories of space and time. We must however remember that these divisions exist only in ourselves, in our knowledge of things and not in the things themselves. We do not know the true relationship of things among themselves, we only know their projections. Visions of things. We do not know the relationships existing between things in reality. At the same time we know with certainty that our division of things into categories of space and time does not correspond to the division of things in themselves, independent of our perception of them. If there existed any division at all among things in themselves, it would not be a division in terms of time and space, according to our usual understanding of these terms, because such a division is not a property of things, but simply our knowledge of things, gained through the senses. Furthermore, we do not know if it is even possible to distinguish those divisions that we observe in space and time. If things are observed not through human eyes, and not from the human standpoint but through some other means of perception, our world may represent an entirely different aspect of a very different organism. We cannot perceive things as images outside of the categories of space and time. However, we constantly think of them outside of space and time. When we say that table, we picture the table to ourselves in space and time, but when we say an object made of wood, not meaning any definite thing, but speaking generally, then it will relate to all things made of wood throughout the world and in all ages. An imaginative person could conceive that we are referring to some great thing made of wood, composed of all objects, whenever and wherever wooden things existed, forming its constituent parts as it were. Kant named his views critical idealism, as opposed to dogmatic idealism, of which Berkeley was the spokesman. According to dogmatic idealism, all the world, all things, i.e. the true causes of our sensations, do not exist, except in our consciousness. They exist only so far as we know them. The entire world perceived by us is simply a reflection of ourselves. Kantian idealism recognizes a world of causes outside of us, but asserts that we cannot know the world by means of sensual perception and everything that we perceive, generally speaking, is of our own creation, the product of a cognizing being. According to Kant, therefore, everything that we find in things is put in and by ourselves. Independently of ourselves we do not know what the world is really like, and our cognition of things has nothing in common with the things as they are outside of us, that is, in themselves. Our ignorance of things in themselves does not depend upon insufficient knowledge, but is due to the fact that by means of sensual perception, we cannot know the world correctly at all. It is for this reason that we seem unable to get to the bottom of things. The real world of noumena, or dinge and sick, things in themselves, appear to elude us. We can only deal with the phenomena, or dinge for uns, things for us, construed by our mind. We must presume that the noumena exist, for they are the cause of our sensations, but we have no right to ascribe the subjective, from the point of view of the noumena, categories of time and space to the real world. Nor can we say anything else about this world of causes, because there simply is no means by which to perceive it without the filtering effects of our sensory apparatus. Space and time are a cage from which we seem unable to escape. We are doomed to ignorance regarding the hidden reality. The very fact of perceiving things through the senses imposes upon them the conditions of time and space. Our experimental knowledge is not the confused perception of a real world. It is a very acute perception of an entirely unreal world, appearing around us at the moment of our contact with the universe of true causes, to which we cannot find the way because we are lost in an unreal, material world. For this reason the pursuance of objective science does not bring us any closer to knowledge of things in themselves, or of true causes. Up to the present Kant's propositions have remained in the form in which he left them. Despite the multiplicity of new philosophical systems that appeared during the 19th and 20th century, and despite the number of philosophers who have studied and commented upon Kant's writings, Kant's principal propositions have remained undeveloped primarily because most people do not know how to read Kant, and dwell instead upon the unimportant and non-essential, ignoring the substance. Kant simply threw the world a problem, demanding the solution but not pointing the way to it. All our positive science, physics, chemistry and biology, is built upon hypotheses contradictory to Kant's propositions. We ourselves impose upon the world properties of space, extension, and do not realize how the world, earth, water, trees, land and organisms cannot possess such extensions. We do not understand how we can see and even measure that extension, if it does not exist, or what the world represents in itself, if it does not possess extension. Does the world really exist? Or as a logical conclusion from Kant's ideas, shall we recognize the validity of Berkeley's concept and deny the existence of the world itself, except in imagination? Positivist philosophy stands in an ambiguous relationship to Kant's views in that it accepts them but at the same time it does not accept them. It accepts and considers them as correct in their relation to the direct experience of the organs of sense. What we see, hear, touch, taste and smell. That is, positivist philosophy recognizes the subjectivity of our receptivity, and recognizes everything that we perceive in objects, as imposed upon them by ourselves, but this is in relation to the different experiences of the senses only. When it concerns itself with scientific experience, in which precise instruments and calculation are used, then positivist philosophy considers Kant's view in relation to that invalid, assuming instead that scientific experience makes known to us the very substance of things, the true cause of our sensations. Or if it does not accomplish this now, then it at least brings us closer to the truth of things and could perhaps inform us later. Contrary to Kant, positivists are sure that more clear knowledge of phenomena makes them acquainted with things in themselves. They believe that in looking upon physical phenomena as the motion of things, as electrical or magnetic phenomenon, and then calculating these motions, they begin to know the very substance of things, i.e. the very causes of phenomena. In other words, they believe exactly in the possibility of what Kant denied, comprehension of the true substance of things through the investigation of phenomena. In general, the position of science with regard to this question of subjectively imposed or objectively cognized things is more than unstable. And to form its conclusions, science is forced to accept many purely hypothetical suppositions as things known, as indubitable data, not demanding any sort of proof. In general, even to the disinterested observer, the state of contemporary science should be of psychological interest because in all branches of science, we are absorbing an enormous number of Aristotelian facts destructive to the harmony and balance of existing systems. These systems maintain themselves only by reason of the attempts of few who are trying to close their eyes to a series of new facts that threaten to obscure everything in their path. Instead, the systemization of that which we do not know could yield for us more of a true understanding of the world and self than the systemization of that which, in the opinion of exact science, we do know.